Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Nick, and it's episode 21. And in this episode, I talk with Ryan Frank. Ryan is a children's ministry leader and innovator, author. He just creates a ton of great resources and content to help children's ministry leaders. And Ryan and I talk about recruiting volunteers. So if you're a youth pastor, next-gen pastor, really any role that has something to do with recruiting and training and retaining volunteers, you'll want to stick around. We talk a lot about some practical things Ryan has seen work and probably some things that you don't hear people talk a lot about. Ryan shares that I think are really, really helpful. So Ryan has a ton, like I said, of resources and things, and a lot of it is free. And so we link to all that in the show notes. So you want to check that out at nickblevins.com/episode 21. Before we jump into the interview, however, I just want to let you know that you can now listen to the podcast on Google Play. So now you can listen on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and Google Play, which I know for me, the thing I love about podcasts is I subscribe to them. So, I don't have to go look them up or get emails to remind me to listen to them or something like that. I just listen to them at various points throughout the day. And so I just, open the app and it's easy to do. So if you use Android, you can find that on Google Play now as well. Even if you don't use iTunes, I'd love it if you could go and rate and review the podcast on iTunes. That really helps get it in front of other leaders. That's obviously the place where people listen the most. And leaving a review and a rating will help some other children's ministry, youth ministry, next-gen pastors find it, that otherwise may not find it. And hopefully, I hope at least, of course, this is helpful to everyone that's in ministry. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. Go ahead and hit subscribe while you're there, and you'll make sure you get new episodes. Volunteer recruiting is probably the number one challenge most ministry leaders face. So I really hope this podcast will be helpful to you. And you can always email me or comment on the post and give me your feedback. I'd love to hear how you're using it, how it's helpful or not. If there's something else we can do to make it better, I'd love to hear. And you can email me at nick@nickblevins.com. But let's go ahead and listen to Ryan Frank as he talks about how to recruit volunteers. Well, it's great to have Ryan Frank on the podcast. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nick.
Yeah, tell us a little bit, for anybody that doesn't know you, a little bit about yourself and your family and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. We live in Indiana, and I actually live in the same town that I was born in and my wife was born in. So we kind of have always stuck around here in north central Indiana. My wife, Beth, and I were high school sweethearts. We've been married for 18 years. We have 3 little girls at home who are just the joys of our life. We love them to death. We have Lucy, who is specially wired. She has autism, and she's 11 years old. We have London, who is now in 1st grade and is 6 years old. And we have a little 3-year-old named Lily. And so Nick, I'm surrounded by girls at home. My dog's even a girl.
Man, you're totally outnumbered.
Yeah, I am, but it's all good. So, yeah, it's really good. We've I pastored at the same church now. I've been a pastor at the church for 20 years, but it's the church where I've grown up at really since I was a kid. So my parents came to know the Lord when I was about 5 years old and started attending this little Baptist church in Sweetser, Indiana. And so I grew up in the church. Through high school and college, got really involved in the church. And so, yeah, it's been good. We love life. I love pastors. I love children's pastors. And I'm really blessed and humbled that over the years, the Lord's not only been able to give me a real fruitful ministry here at our church and in our community, but also been able to help just a lot of children's pastors and ministry leaders keep them encouraged and trained and try to keep them up with what's going on out in the world of children's ministry. So we are today, I'm a bivocational pastor. So I very involved at our local church, but also have some other areas of ministry outside the church. Most folks know me from Kids Matter and Kids Matter magazine, which was a ministry that started out of our local church ministry. The But then we've also launched a few new things over the last couple of years, like Kidman Academy and the Sam Chan Leadership Institute. And I'm able to work with a lot of children's pastors, and in recent days have had the opportunity to even work with pastors and youth pastors, and have kind of gotten out of my kids ministry bubble a little bit the last 6 or 9 months. But it's good. At the end of the day, Nick, what I really love is I love the church. I love pastors. I love children's and family ministry, and love waking up every day,
yeah, that's good.
Folks. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
We'll talk more about some of that stuff too, as well, like Kidman Academy and
yes.
the book you have coming out and all those things. I didn't know you were part of the Sam Chan his deal either. That's cool.
Yeah, I am. I met Dr. Chan probably a year and a half ago through a mutual friend, and he heard what we were doing with Kidman Academy and kind of saw the success of it, and asked me if I'd fly down to Atlanta, meet with him. So our team helped him launch the Sam Chan Leadership Institute. He actually has asked me to be the director of the Sam Chan Leadership Institute, which has been kind of fun. And that's kind of what's thrust me into the world of a lot of pastors and a lot of churches that I probably wouldn't have connected with otherwise. So that's been fun. Yeah. So it's not really the Sam Chan Leadership Institute isn't a 12-month like diploma program like Kidman Academy. It's an ongoing kind of continuity program for leaders. So there are ministry leaders, a lot of pastors, a lot of marketplace leaders. So it's really all about leadership and staying on your edge and working with people and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's good. I love
Dr. Chan.
everything Sam Chan writes.
Oh yeah, he's good stuff.
Yeah,
Yep.
Great stuff.
Yep.
So we want to talk about, before we kind of jump into all those other things too, volunteer recruiting, which, like pretty much every person wants to learn how to do that better or needs more volunteers. Even if things are growing and going well, you need more volunteers. So as you do work with children's ministry leaders, what are some of the biggest struggles you see in recruiting and retaining volunteers?
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, whenever I talk to a group of children's pastors, I'll ask them, what are your top 2 or 3 challenges you face? I mean, this one always rises as the number one challenge, and that is I don't have enough help, or I can't keep my workers. I was on the I Love Kidman Facebook group, not last night, but the night before, just kind of scrolling through, and I was like, wow, I saw this post that had like 80 some comments, and what's this all about? And this woman that she was kind of at her wit's end. I'm tired of people telling me, no, they won't help me, and I feel like I'm doing this all alone. And it was cool to see the community kind of gather around her and help her. And there were 80 some comments, and it's probably more than that now, 80 some comments on, just trying to help her, encourage her, and rally behind her. But the point is, it's definitely a pain point in children's ministry because of the sheer fact that we work with so many kids. There are so many kids, and it requires so many workers. So really, I think and I know we'll probably get into some of this in the next little bit, but it's really a mind shift change is really what I encourage leaders to wrestle with. First of all, the whole mindset of should you even be recruiting or trying to get people to volunteer. We'll probably get into that in a little bit because there's a better approach. And then you've got to shift mindsets from, hey, I don't I'm a kids pastor or a kids worker, but I'm not just the kids pastor. Really, I don't just work with kids. I work with adults. And I think a lot of the secret sauce to being a good children's pastor and building something that's going to outlive you is you have to learn how to work with adults. And, you not only have parents, which is probably a whole nother podcast, right? But you've got your pastor and your staff, the people you work with at the church. That's a whole other podcast, but you've got all of these volunteers. And so you can be a great, kids guy or kids girl. I mean, the kids can love it. You can be dynamic and front of those kids. But if you don't know how to work with adults, you're always going to be crippled because you're always going to be short on volunteers. You're going to feel like it's all on me. So I think one of the greatest skills you can develop, Nick, is the skill of learning to work with adults and growing your relational skills. And for some of us, this is easier than others. Some people just naturally are people-oriented. Others are more introverted, maybe more task-oriented. But for all of us, we have to work at growing those people skills. So, in fact, I think you should probably spend as much time, maybe even more, with your volunteers and adults than you do with the kids, even though that seems a little counterintuitive because I'm a kids pastor or I'm a kids worker. You've got to change your mindset that, hey, I am more than a kids guy. I've got to figure out how to work well with adults and begin to grow those skills. So all that to say, you asked me what are some big struggles? I definitely think retaining volunteers is a big struggle. I think probably the top few reasons, just to recap, one, there's just so many kids and it requires so many. So the very nature of it is it's going to be a struggle. And then I think a lot of kids workers and children's pastors forget that they've got to intentionally work on their interpersonal skills and their relationships with other adults.
That's good. We probably don't think of it as much like that, because I definitely think of it in terms of you need to work less with kids directly and more with leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably can't, I don't know. I guess there are probably plenty of churches where you might have 40 kids and you can squeak by with that approach, but you certainly can't grow it past that. But I never thought as much about the relational part of it. Maybe that's the barrier,
I think for a lot of people, I think that there are a few, I think for a lot of people, that's a barrier. It's, either I'm introverted or, there are people that are extroverted, but it's like all they care about are their kids or their teenagers in their youth group and they run over people. So you've got to deal with the relational part. I think another barrier to recruiting volunteers can be your office or your desk or your computer, because you spend way too much time sitting at your desk and not being out with people. It's a mindset change, but it doesn't have to be real difficult. It doesn't have to be real difficult. There are things you can do, even the most introverted person, there are things you can do to grow your relational skills. And for the extrovert that loves people and, won't shut up, you've got to learn, there's a mindset shift for you where you got to learn how to take that energy and you got to bring people to a point where you're asking them to do something very significant and you get them to commit. But yeah, relational skills, they're huge. And you probably have seen people like this. I know I have in my church, and I've worked with a lot of kids pastors who are like this, that they have all of the credentials, so to speak. They've been to college, they've got the degree, they've got the experience. Maybe they're even at a big church, or they have a lot of responsibility. Yet their ministry never really goes where it should because they fail in this area. And I tell people all the time, and I don't have any scientific data to prove it, but I think that 90% of people who fail in ministry fail because they lack good people skills. They don't know how to relate well to other people. And if you don't know how to talk to people, how to win people over, how to make friends, how to be likable, I'm not going to put my money on you because I don't think you're going to last for long. However, you find somebody that chooses to grow in that area, and every day I'm going to take new steps, and I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. I'm going to talk to somebody I normally wouldn't. I'm going to text somebody I normally wouldn't text. I'm going to send a thank you card to somebody I normally wouldn't send a thank you card to. All of a sudden, you begin to develop those patterns in your life. So here's the deal. Before you can, and this goes into recruiting, Nick, and that is before you can sell your ministry, you have to sell yourself, right? And so if I'm going around trying to recruit people for my ministry, trying to get people to teach for me, but they don't like me, I'm not likable, a fat chance people are going to really sign up because they don't like you. So you've got to, and I don't know if sell is the right word, but you've got to sell yourself. You've got to become likable. And I think the more likable you are, the more people naturally gravitate towards you. The more likely they're going to be to gravitate towards your ministries. That makes sense?
It does. And it's probably true that it may not be that they dislike you. They just may not even know you, right? So part of it is just getting to know them. They may not
like you. That's exactly right.
And so you get to know them first. And I know that's something we try to focus on from a personal recruiting standpoint is, one, meet people you don't know, right? I mean, that's huge. Make sure you're free on Sundays during services, but in between services to meet people in the lobby that you don't know. But really, like, care about them first. Don't just look at them like, walking around as like recruits. I got to get them. Actually, just talk to them, care about them.
Talk to them.
Yeah, then determine if there'd be someone to invite onto the team. Are there any, in that same vein, are there any more practical things you think leaders could do to recruit volunteers better, grow their relational skills? The vision part. Like you were kind of getting to that as well, being able to sell yourself, but also the ministry. What are some tips you would give there?
We've got to remember this. I think, and I learned this. I heard Dr. Chan talk about this once, and it's always stuck with me, and I've taught it really ever since, and that is that there's a big difference between a volunteer and a recruit. Now, this can be a game changer if you're a children's pastor, youth pastor, and you've got to recruit a force of volunteers. Understand there's a huge difference between a volunteer and a recruit. So if I think my solution is to get more people to volunteer, if only the pastor would say some more, if only the pastor would announce from the pulpit that I need more volunteers, or if only the church bulletin or the secretary at the church, if she would put a border around that announcement in the bulletin to draw attention, people would sign up to recruit. If only they would give me a table in the foyer, if only they would. Trying to figure out how to get people to volunteer is the wrong way to go at it for a couple of reasons. One, you end up with people on the list that you don't want, and then you're stuck with. And second, the people that sign up often volunteer for the wrong reason. They were twist-armed. They felt guilty. It was an impulse decision. You end up stuck with these people that you really aren't going to really help. Now, there are times and there are positions where, quote, just a volunteer, that person that would just sign up on a clipboard. There are times where you just need a warm body. You need somebody to stand there and serve pizza. You need somebody to bake cookies, and it can be anybody. But when you're talking about key roles, key positions, which is normally our pain points in children's ministry, there are key slots that need filled. The best way to build a team is not by waiting for them to volunteer, but it is by directly recruiting them. So I said there's a big difference between a volunteer and a recruit. We all want, Nick, I'm sure everybody that's listening to this podcast would say, I want high capacity volunteers. I want people that are committed. I want people that are in it for the long haul. I want people that are going to take this seriously. I want people that by high capacity, they can help me advance the vision forward. They can help me get to this next level. Well, here's the deal. If you want a high capacity volunteer, if you want a high capacity leader, that high capacity leader will never volunteer. I shouldn't say never. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to volunteer. They're not going to sign up on a clipboard. They're not going to walk through. I had a children's pastor tell me a couple weeks ago that they were all upset they don't have enough volunteers because the pastor shut down the volunteer fair weekend. A high capacity volunteer is not going to walk through the ministry fair weekend and try to decide what clipboards to sign up on. Why? Because high capacity volunteers are already busy doing things that they find significance in. They're already busy doing things that they are helping people with. So if you want a high capacity volunteer, You got to go after them. You have to flush them out, figure out who they are, which there's a niche to that, or that takes work. But you got to flush them out. You got to find those super talented, high capacity, high committed people. They're probably already going to be busy. And then you have to go after them with a vengeance. And what you have to do, it may require taking them to Starbucks. It may require inviting them over to your house for barbecue. It may require, going out to lunch after church on Sunday, and you sit down and you say, listen, Nick, I know you're already busy. I know you are doing this and this and this. But you know what? Let me just take a minute and explain to you. Can I take a minute and explain to you the vision that I've got for this ministry the next year or two? Here are some things I want to accomplish. Here are some areas that we need to grow. Now, you know what, Nick? I believe, and I've been praying that God would send people like you. And I need someone like you because to get here, I've got to have someone that can do what you can do, that can do boom, 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 boom. And Nick, would you pray? You don't have to answer me right now because I know you're busy and I know you've got a lot on your plate and I want you to take this seriously, but would you consider helping me with this? Now, here's the thing. If you will begin direct recruiting and not just sitting back waiting on volunteers, you're going to find you'll be pleasantly surprised at the number of qualified, committed people that'll help you. But you've got to remember, they're not going to volunteer. They're not going to sign up on a clipboard. They're not going to do it. You got to directly go after them.
That's good. That's the recruit thing. You got to recruit, not wait for people to volunteer.
That's the recruit. Direct recruit. Now, that has to happen in the framework of relationships, which is what we were talking about earlier. So if I'm not a relational leader, if people don't know who I am, if I hide out in my office, if my comfort zone is to be with the kids and not to be with the adults, and I don't know people, or if I'm just not likable. I mean, there are some people that their very countenance, they're not likable. Now, they might be nice people, but their very countenance, they don't smile. They'll walk right by you and not say hi. If I am not likable, if I don't have that context of relationships, the direct recruiting is not going to be effective. So it all has to happen in a framework of being relational, in a framework of being likable, in a framework of having good people skills. I think there are three big things I hope that the listeners of this podcast take away. One is work on your relationships, work on your people skills. 2, don't rely on people waiting for people to volunteer. Start directly recruiting. 3rd, create a community where people, once they volunteer, people are loved, they are appreciated, they are resourced. If you have a community where my volunteers, you know what, this is their small group and this is their community and this is where they are loved and appreciated, you're not going to have, you're not going to have volunteers quitting like crazy. In fact, more than likely, you won't be able to shake them off with a stick because they love where they're at. And I found, maybe Nick, you found this in your ministry, that when you have that kind of a culture, that kind of a culture is a magnet to people. People want to be a part of something like that. So it goes back to basic human needs, which is a key in recruiting people, understanding, and it's a chapter of my new book, which maybe we'll talk about in a little bit, is understanding the basic needs of people. When you understand the basic needs of people, one of them being that people need to be needed, another one being that people need to feel like they're part of something significant, another one being that people need to feel appreciated, another one, people need to be resourced and they need to know that you're there for them. When you understand these human needs, and by the way, human needs Models change, methods change. They change every decade. These basic human needs go back to Adam and Eve. When I understand these basic human needs and I create a culture where people's needs are being met, they're appreciated, they're loved, they're cared for, they're resourced, they understand they're part of something significant, you're not going to have a volunteer shortage problem. They're not going to be quitting and bailing ship to go somewhere else. They'll stick there. But all this, Nick, takes intentionality. It takes intentionality.
And certainly, going back to what we started with, takes a lot of time spent on this and not as much time spent with kids, right?
It does. Yeah. It does. And that's a challenge because you know what? We got into kids ministry, most of us, because we love kids. We love being in front of the kids. We love programming for the kids. We see the potential in the life of a child. But you've got to understand that it takes a team. And the more your ministry grows, the more your leadership grows, the less everything should be revolving around you, and the more you should be doing with others and through others. And when I understand that, I'm ready to go to the next level.
That's good. I would love to talk more about the book. I know we're going to hit some of the other things, but especially since it's about volunteers. So tell us more about it. It's coming out soon. What's the focus? Obviously, you're hitting some of that stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Real excited. This is actually something that's been brewing in me for about 2 years. And I started writing it about 2 years ago. I did start writing it 2 years ago, and actually wrote it. The book's been written for about a year and a half. It's been sitting there. And within the last 2 months, I decided now's the time to launch this thing, and I put some final tweaks on it. And I think it releases at the end of September. We're excited about it. It's called The Volunteer Code. It's 10 chapters about things I've learned in my ministry at my church. And then as I am listening to the children's ministry community, as I am talking to churches and pastors that seem to be getting it right. Like you go visit their church and these volunteers, man, they're spot on. They're on game. What are you doing? What are some of your secrets? I share some things that I've screwed up on over the years, but it's 10 chapters on really how to have a breakthrough in this area of volunteers. There's no reason why volunteers should be the number one headache in ministry. I mean, it should really be something that's celebrated. I think we're always going to need more volunteers, but it's a mindset. There's no reason why volunteers and the shortage of volunteers and volunteers quitting should be a monkey around my neck and on my back that never lets go. I really can have a volunteer breakthrough, and it's about shifting my mindset, which, by the way, maybe that's a word for you, is a mindset shift for someone that's listening to this podcast, because maybe you feel like I don't have what it takes to recruit volunteers. I'm not wired that way. I'm introverted. I'm shy. I don't feel like I don't have that salesman in me that can recruit. And you do have it in you. Let me just speak that word over you. I remember in the in the Old Testament, I read this a couple months back, where there came a point in David's life where the scripture says David perceived himself to be king. There had to come a point where he had to understand in his head, I am the king. And you need to see yourself as the leader that God has called you to be. And a big part of children's ministry is, again, I said it earlier, I've heard Jim Weidman teach this a lot. Nick, I know you know Jim. Jim says you work with 4 groups of people. Only one of those groups is kids. The other group are parents. Those kids don't bring themselves. Another group is your pastor and the pastors that you work with. Another group are volunteers. So really, kids are only 1 out of 4 groups of people you work with. The majority of who you work with are adults. So shift your mindset. Don't buy into the trap that you can't do this. So we talk about that in the book. Shift your mindset. And then I really just share some very practical things that you can do to break through that volunteer code and start recruiting and keeping them like never before. So we talk about things like recruiting. We talk about things like growing your relational skills, talk about vision for your ministry and how to communicate that vision out. Training, which is a challenge. How do you train busy volunteers? So we have a chapter devoted to training. How do I provide opportunities for my volunteers to grow so they don't get stale? And just really a lot of encouragement. So, and I'm actually, Nick, I'm giving away, I don't know when you're going to release this podcast, but in the middle of October, I'm doing a free online conference, 2-day conference called Uncharted. And everyone who attends this free online conference is going to have the opportunity to get a free copy of this book in the mail. So depending on when this podcast releases, if there's still time, sign up for Uncharted and you'll be able to get this book sent to you in the mail for free.
Yeah, we'll make sure it releases before then. Maybe. So Uncharted is, what are the dates specifically?
Yeah, it's October 13th and 14th. And the website is, if you just go to kidmannation.com, kidmannation.com, talk to you about this Uncharted, this 2-day conference. We announced this online conference a week ago today, and we really haven't even done any dedicated emails or anything. We've already got, just an hour ago, we hit 1,000 people that have signed up. So I think we're gonna have 3,000 or 4,000 people that are on this online conference. It's going to be really, really fun. And we want to give everybody a free book for being there. So thanks for helping me get the word out on that.
Yeah, for sure. And is there a limit? Like, does it sell out?
No, you know what? We're just going to keep our platform can handle as many people as we want. We just have to pay for it. So no limit.
Cool.
No limit.
Okay, good. Yeah, we'll make sure this gets out before then so people hear it. And we'll also link to the book because it'll be out by then.
Awesome.
For anybody, but obviously, if you want to get the book for free and the online conference is free, that's the best way to go. You can't beat free, so that's awesome. So that's the book and Uncharted, which is obviously pretty new. Are a couple of the things you're doing to help serve the Kidman community, but there are a lot of other things too. So I just want to open, the door to talk about some of that stuff, like Kidman Academy. Yeah, I'd love to hear about all that. I think people should be a part of this.
Let me tell you about that. Let's talk about Kidman Academy. Then I want to tell you about something online that's fun too, that everybody should be a part of. So we launched Kidman Academy a year ago, and the idea behind Kidman Academy, or really what Kidman Academy is it's a 12-month program where it's all online, and at the end of 12 months, you earn a diploma in children's ministry. So here in 2 weeks, actually, we're having Kidman Academy Live in Cincinnati. We've got 550 people coming. We're going to have a graduation, and it's kind of like a 3-day conference, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. So we've got 600 students right now in Kidman Academy, and these are a range of full-time kids pastors, volunteers, bivocational. We've got people that are new. Some people have been doing it for 40 years. And what it is, every month, there's a focus in Kidman Academy. So the focus 1 month might be volunteers. 1 month might be working with your pastor. 1 month might be curriculum. 1 month might be special needs. 1 month worship. And then we have a guest faculty member every month. So it's an influencer, thought leader, someone we've identified that can speak into that topic. And so every week of every month, really, we're doing stuff online, and there are live classes and stuff. But really what's cool has been hearing from our students really what Kidman Academy has meant to them. And I've always known that children's ministry, it can be very lonely. I get it. Nick, you get it. You often feel like you're disconnected from your pastor, from the staff, disconnected from the adults in the church because you're always back with the kids. And it can just be lonely. And then it can also be challenging because the world of kids is changing so rapidly. Trends are changing. Ministry models are changing. So how do I stay encouraged? How do I stay resourced? How do I stay relevant? And that's a lot of what Kidman Academy is about. It's in helping you in your journey. So it's been a lot of fun. We actually, in October, here in a couple weeks, we're starting the third Kidman Academy class. And it looks like we're on track to have 250 new students that are going to be joining us in October. So it's been a lot of fun. So I'd encourage you to check it out, Nick. The website is kidmanacademy.com. Another fun thing that is about a year and a half old now is our I Love Kidman Facebook group. And that continues to grow probably by, 500-600 new members every month. And we're almost at 8,000 members in our I Love Kidman Facebook group. And this is just an online Facebook group community for children's pastors and ministry leaders where you can share ideas, share encouragement. Hey, I've dealt with this problem with a parent yesterday. Any advice? Hey, I'm teaching this Sunday on the Lord's table. Any idea of what kind of a game would work with that? So it's really fun to see how this community has come together. You can join. I'd encourage you to join if you're not part of I Love Kidman Facebook group. Obviously, it's free. You can just jump on Facebook and search for I Love Kidman, or if there's a URL, ilovekidman.com, that will redirect you to that Facebook page. But that's lots of fun. Nick, I know you're part of that, and
it's a great group. I just saw today somebody posted something like I don't know if they were hiring for the position or if it was a volunteer role, but they needed like a nursery preschool director job description, and somebody's like, "Yeah, I have one. I'll email it to you. What's your email?" Like it's stuff like that happens all the time.
It is great. So fun to see how the ideas that are shared, the encouragement. Really, I tell people, sometimes people will email me and, "Hey, Ryan, I'm dealing with this problem." And I just will answer back a lot of times. So, I could tell you what I think, and I will, but let's have that conversation on I Love Kidman, because it's really cool. Instead of just hearing from me, about any time you post a question, you're going to get a ton of responses and feedback and links and pretty cool stuff. How online world has changed even the way we network and connect.
Yeah, it's great. Just it helps you get new ways of doing things, lots of help. And about Kidman Academy, I'll just say, I help organize a children's ministry network that meets up here. We were talking about that the last time we spoke. But 2 people in that network have been through Kidman Academy and just love it. They could not recommend it more. And I think a lot of it I feel like seminaries are doing a better job of teaching practical ministry too. So, build the theological foundation and all that stuff, but also teach kind of the practical side. But for many years that was missing, and it's just hard too. Other than maybe doing like a residency or an internship at a church, it's hard. And Kidman Academy obviously is that exactly. It's like super practical. Let's talk about this. Do it next month. We're seeing that. Yeah, we're seeing that in other areas too, other ministry areas too, which is good. I think it's needed.
Exactly. Yeah, we try to. I think probably on average, it's going to take you maybe 2 hours a week in work. But any work we do in Kidman Academy, it's all. We're not at all. We don't test. No quizzes, tests, essays. Any work, does one of 2 things real in particular. Either it's going to help you think critically, which we think is very important, and it's going to be something that's going to practically apply to your ministry context today. So it's all about critical thinking and practical application. And I know Kathy's in your group, isn't she? Kathy Phillips. She's a good friend.
She is. Kathy's awesome. Yep, she did Kidman Academy and loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. So,
and like you said, I think that's actually one of the things that's missing, or it's hard to do for understandable reasons. It's really hard to work on your ministry, because you're just so busy. So I guess, in Kidman Academy, you get this chance where, like you said, it's 2 hours a week, but a lot of it you're going to work on your ministry. So you're learning and you're helping your ministry grow at the same time, which is nice.
Well, that's why you need to. That's why, Nick, I appreciate, guys like you that are making these podcasts, just trying to help people, because and if you're listening to this podcast, thumbs up, great job. You've picked a great one to listen to. You got to invest in yourself, because if you don't invest in yourself, no one else will. And it's not your pastor's job to invest in you. It's your job. And so you're the only, I tell people all the time, I'm the only me that I have. You're the only you have. You're the only you that your spouse has. You're the only you that your kids have. You're the only you that your pastor has. You're the only you that your volunteers have. You're the only you that the kids in your church have. So you have to invest in yourself, and you've got to constantly grow. You've got to constantly stretch yourself. You've got to constantly challenge your thinking and stay on the cutting edge. Keep listening to these podcasts like Nick's. Keep reading good books, finding people that you want, that you can learn from and learn from them. And telling you what, if you'll do that, be just intentional with investing in yourself, Nick, I think you're going to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody else. And you're going to find yourself more happy. You're going to find yourself more fulfilled. You're going to find yourself more productive. You're going to find your ministries more fruitful just in taking a little bit of time to invest in yourself. So thanks for letting me invest in these leaders that are listening today. This has been fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. We'll link to all the stuff that we talked about in the show notes, so the book and Uncharted, Kids Matter, like Kidman Academy, the whole deal. So anybody can go there and find information about that. Ryan, I really appreciate the time. Is there any other place you want to point people to connect with you or follow you?
Man, I don't think so, Nick. You know, all my email and my social links and everything are all on my website, ryanfrank.com, my podcast stuff. So, that's a great place to connect with me. And Nick, if I can ever serve you or any of your listeners, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate it. All right. Bye. How many of you sat up a little bit when he said it's not your pastor's job to invest in you? Right? I think a lot of us, that's the perspective that we have. And I think that's ideal. I want to invest in people that I lead for sure. So I think that's the ideal, but he's right. At the end of the day, I'm responsible for my growth. And if there's one common thing among leaders who really do well in any space, in the church and business, I think it might be that they invest in themselves and they learn and they get better and learn from other people. So hopefully that's why you're listening to this podcast. That's why I love doing it, because I get to ask questions to some amazing leaders and learn from them. Here's some action steps that I came away with that you could do. One is to go to kidmannation.com and register for Uncharted. If you lead in children's ministry, obviously you can register for that and learn from that, but you also get a copy of Ryan's new book, The Volunteer Code. So that'd be really helpful. Another thing is you could join the I Love Kidman Facebook group. Again, if you lead in children's ministry, it's just a great place to ask questions, share ideas, get ideas, share some resources, things like that. If you lead in student ministry, there are some awesome groups out there as well, and I'd recommend Stuff You Can Use, that group for youth ministry, and Download Youth Ministry. There's a Facebook group there as well, and we just had Josh Griffin on the podcast from DYM, so those would be helpful. And then lastly, this would be the hardest, but we talked a lot about the need for people skills. And if you're just more of a tasks person, you're wired more to work behind the scenes. I'm probably a little bit like that. I joke that I play an extrovert at conferences or at church on Sunday mornings and just different places where I need to be engaged with people, maybe more than I naturally would. I just have to work on it, and I continue to learn from other people. And my recommendation would be to talk to someone that can help you develop your people skills. And here's the thing I think is important. I don't know that I would talk to the person who's naturally good at it. They don't know why they're good at it, right? They may not be able to walk you through what you need to do to grow there. It's kind of like in sports. The elite athlete at their position could certainly help another athlete get better. But oftentimes that's why some coaches are coaches, because they played and they never had the elite, freakish athletic ability. And so they had to work hard and they had to develop and grow and learn the techniques and all of those kind of things. So I don't know how you could find that person. I guess my first thought would be who's really good behind the scenes and with people. And oftentimes if you start learning from them, you realize they were kind of naturally gifted at one, like most of us, and then learn the other. And if you could learn from them, I think that would really be helpful. Oftentimes that's not something we think about when it comes to volunteer recruiting, but it's really important. You can find everything we talked about, all the resources, links, free stuff that Ryan gives away in the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 21. And the next episode, next week, we talk with Brian Dollar about his book, Talk Now and Later, How to Lead Kids Through Life's Tough Topics. It's a great conversation, and that book is awesome. It's an excellent resource. I think every parent should have it. I think every church leader should have it to give to parents in their church. either in the moment, or maybe it's just something you kind of build in that parents can get their hands on just so they're prepared. Because a lot of the conversation that Brian and I have, and a lot of what's in the book, is about being prepared for those topics in advance, not necessarily responding after something's already happened. So that's a great conversation. You don't want to miss it. Be sure to hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.